This is one of my favorite teas for the fall. While Sencha teas are unroasted and Hojicha teas are fully roasted, this tea is right in the middle. In this video, we're going to cover a pan-roasted Japanese tea that actually tastes more like a Chinese tea. So a few years ago, we were traveling around Miyazaki Prefecture in southern Japan. We stayed in this tiny town of Takachiho, which is not well known outside of the tea industry, but it's home to some famous types of teas. In the morning, we drove out into the countryside to meet a tea farmer who specializes in roasted teas. Inside this 200-year-old family home, we tasted a tea that changed our perception of what a Japanese green tea could be. In order to be considered a green tea, the tea leaves need to be heated after the harvest in order to deactivate the enzymes that cause oxidation. This is what prevents the tea from becoming a black tea or oxidized tea. In Japan, this heat is applied by taking the tea leaves through a steam bath. This is why you get more of these intense steamed vegetable or seaweed flavors in a typical Japanese green tea like Sencha. In China, the leaves are placed into a large pan and turned over a high heat. If you think about it, steamed vegetables taste different than vegetables that have been cooked in a pan, and the same is true for tea leaves. Chinese teas have warmer, nuttier taste characteristics compared to Japanese teas. But Kamairicha breaks all the rules. This is a Japanese green tea that's made using the Chinese pan firing technique. This region of Miyazaki is one of the last strongholds of this rare tea. You'll hardly find this tea being produced in the rest of Japan, but in this area, it's considered to be a regional specialty. After the leaves are picked, they undergo a short withering process, and then they are transferred to this pan where they are roasted and turned. So now you might be thinking, isn't this the same as Hojicha? But there's actually a key difference. Hojicha is a fully roasted tea. While the color looks more like a black tea, it's actually a type of green tea because the leaves are unoxidized. The leaves are steamed and then roasted at a high heat, which cooks out a lot of the polyphenols, allowing the tea to trade these grassy notes for flavors of chocolate, coffee, and caramel. This farmer also makes a Hojicha, and he uses the same pan. The only difference is he will cover the pan to raise the temperature and then roast the tea for a longer time. But for Kamairicha, he wants to find that sweet spot, just hot enough to create a more cooked and nutty flavor, but not too hot that the tea roasts. To do this, he leaves the pan uncovered and roasts the tea for a shorter time. These metal paddles will turn the leaves so that they cook evenly, and the farmer will carefully monitor the pan to make sure the leaves aren't over roasting. Once the leaves are done, they are taken through a final drying process. The freshly picked leaves are between 70 to 80% water, and by the end of the production process, they will be at 4 to 7%, ensuring that they can be stored well and infused properly. This is the final product. You can see that unlike Sencha, which is tightly rolled into these needle shapes, Kamairicha is turned into the kama shapes, similar to Tamaryokucha. You can see the leaves are not quite as green either. The roasting process has turned them into a camo green color. Because they were roasted at a lower temperature and for a shorter time, they are not completely roasted like Hojicha, but they're somewhere in the middle. But let's compare these teas. We can use a higher temperature water for the roasted teas because they're lower in catechins and polyphenols. These are the more bitter components of the leaf, and they're extracted at higher temperatures. So normally, you need to keep the temperature low, but for roasted teas, it's less of a problem. As you would expect, the flavor of the Kamairicha is in between the two. The Sencha is sweeter with notes of steamed spinach, edamame, and sweet corn. The Hojicha is darker with notes of coffee and caramel. But the Kamairicha strikes that balance between the two. It maintains a lot of its greener characteristics while still drifting into the warmer, nuttier direction. There are notes of cashews, toasted almonds, and even a hint of nori. I really like to enjoy this tea in the early fall, just as the mornings start to get cooler. It's a good transition between the fresh senchas of the spring and summer and the dark roasted Hojicha of the late fall. It's a very unique tea and one I think everyone should try. If you want to get some of this tea for yourself, we found some great ones in Miyazaki Prefecture. You can browse our selection of the best pesticide-free Kamairicha at neoteas.com. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you next time.